Okay, so here we go. Thanks for joining the Keptn meeting. Today is January 27th. So we have quite a lot of contributors on the call. So thanks everyone for joining. And let's take a look at today's agenda. I guess I just kick it off today. I don't have many items from myself. So just quick update. Next Wednesday, we will have another APAC EMEA meeting. So currently we try to focus on user experiences. So we will have one demo for integration, and then Brett McCoy will also talk about his Keptn experiences. So this is tentative agenda, and please feel free to contribute. And what do we have today? So we have issues and contributions, I guess, with a lot of demos today. But basically, that's it. Does anyone have any other topics?
Maybe a request. Since the major contributors at the moment to these meetings are European and from APEC, should we also switch the time frame towards a more EU and APEC friendly, like we do for the community meeting?
Yeah, so it's actually one of the options. So we could just merge, one of options is that doing a meeting in this time zone once per 2 weeks and once per 2 weeks in APAC time zone. So basically changing every other week. Would it make sense for you, or would you like to have a separate meeting on a weekly basis in the APAC time zone?
I would say let's discuss this in a poll, maybe.
Okay.
So everyone from the community can contribute with their own opinion and preferences.
Okay. Yeah, I would be definitely happy to change this time, maybe make it 1 hour earlier. But yeah. So I can just start the doodle. Is Thursday generally fine with everyone? Or would you also like to have another day?
I think Thursday is perfect.
Nice for me too. So I will create a doodle after this meeting, and yeah, everyone is welcome to vote.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we can continue with the common agenda. So Andrei, would you like to take over?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thanks. So you're seeing my screen?
You don't?
Yeah, great. So hi everyone. From my agenda, actually, there are two main topics. I would start with the second one. The second one is related to the integration test developer documentation. Actually, we had integration test developer documentation before, but actually it was outdated. So we created a new one, which describes the structure of the integration tests, also adding how to add a new integration test, running integration tests remotely or locally. It's described in the Keptn docs, and also how to set up your local environment to run the integration test locally. We have two options here to set up a K3D cluster or a Minishift. The K3D is more recommended from our side, which uses the K3D version 5. And therefore, you can run the installation on the installation of the integration tests and run them locally, so you can see after your changes the results of the integration test. Yeah, and the second topic is introducing a new waiting state in the sequence endpoint. I have a quick demo for this. Currently, till now, when one sequence was blocked by another, it sustained in the trigger state, but now we have introduced an awaiting state. So when the sequence is blocked, it has a waiting state. So now I will execute 2 deliveries, so 2 sequences, the first one and the second one. And I will open my Keptn. Here you can see then one sequence is running and the second sequence is waiting. When we look at the responses, then we see that the new state, originally it was only triggered, now it is waiting. And the second and the first one is in state started. So when the first one ends the sequence in the first stage, in this means in DEO, then the second sequence is started on the stage DEO. And also when the sequence is running through, the first sequence is on prod and running in prod, and the second sequence ends its work and the dev stage. It returns to the waiting state until the stage prod is again free to use and free to run the sequence. So here you can see it's running both, and in a few seconds it's waiting again. Yeah. Any questions to this? So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Really cool.
Thank you.
Johannes, you're muted.
Andre, could you reopen the bridge, please? My question is, on the right side, when you scroll up, is the state of the sequence also reflected in the top line and the header? Delivery succeeded is then when delivery is in a waiting state, is then there the message delivery waiting?
It should be, yeah.
Started.
It should be. I was clicked on to another sequence, so therefore it was misleading maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to ask whether the label in the headline or on the top is also adjusting. Cool.
If not, if there are not any other questions, then I will stop sharing.
And Elizabeth couldn't join today, so I will share what she did or on her behalf. Can you see my screen? Perfect. So the first thing that she worked on was a bug fix when there were some wrongly created events. Then the bridge would not show anything on the right-hand side. And now she fixed it to provide the proper trace here, although the event was wrongly defined. Then she also worked on improving the notification messages inside the environment screen and in the project creation, because as we already announced, Keptn will soon stop to support projects without an upstream. So now there is a message that's saying that if you have created a project without an upstream, then instead of presenting the information icon, it will present a warning icon, and next to that, a message telling you that soon Keptn will only work with upstreams, so please add the upstream to that. Then she also did some refactoring in the code. There's some small performance improvement in changing how we polling data in the sequence screen. Then she also created some mockups for a new configuration for configuring Keptn with an upstream that can also connect via HTTPS or SSH. For instance, in this screenshot from a mock of the UI, you can, below your project name, you can configure an upstream repository both via HTTPS or SSH. Here, the example for HTTPS, where you can present the standard data from the Git URL, a user, and a token. You can also then specify a specific certificate if you use any self-sign authorization, or you can also attach it as a text code. It also be allowed to go through a proxy if necessary. And similarly, for the SSH configuration, we just specify the Git remote repository URL and then the private key of the SSH connection. Any thoughts on this? I saw Johannes, you were looking puzzled.
I have one question as well.
Yes.
Must
Go
be
ahead,
the
Johannes.
public key. Must be the public key of SSH.
Yes, I think this was a typo on our side.
Okay.
I was just gonna ask. Then we would need some password information as well or something.
Yeah. But this is just the general idea how the UI should look like. It's not that this text and all this form is represented here would be exactly implemented like that, but this is mostly a guidance how the UI should look like. Then we can refine on the wording. Okay, then we jump to the next one. Yeah, at the moment this is still a work in progress, is not yet merged, but the first version is there. So most likely tomorrow it will be merged in master. Currently, we present secrets just as a list without knowing what are exactly the keys inside each of these secrets. So she worked on changing the secret screen, and instead of having just the list of the secret name, I have also a table there where each secret then has multiple columns. One column would be for the scope, and then the other column would be the list of keys that are belonging to that specific secret.
That's
Any
nice.
question for that? Okay. And then the last ticket she's been working on is this one. Currently, when we create a secret with a name that already exists, we just get this ugly message on the bottom with 409, a conflict occurred. And she wrapped this error with a better error message telling verbally that there was a conflict because the secret already existed and not just the URL with a 409. And that's everything for Elizabeth. Any questions?
In the future, it would be nice to know how secrets would interact with CAP 60, I mean, RPAC model. So whether there is a plan to somehow restrict secrets access within the instance or whether they would be shared. Yeah, I guess it's something to cover in CAP 60 now.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a topic we will need to discuss.
Okay, then I will hand it over to Ermin.
Thank you very much. I'm going to present one pull request I've been working on, showing a proper error message when having problems parsing a shipyard YAML. And in particular, the problem here was that when editing or adding a subscription, we load the shipyard YAML to parse the tasks for the task dropdown there. And yeah, if for some reason the shipyard YAML is malformed, and this might happen through a change on the Git repository, yeah, previously the page was stuck here, and yeah, that is now fixed, so that with shipyard YAML that's not parsable, the user gets a message could not parse shipyard YAML, and yeah, that page is not broken, and of course you can retry or jump back to the uniform view. Yeah, I'm here still struggling with some UI tests because yeah, they are very flaky and yeah, act differently on GitHub than locally. But yeah, that's actually all from my side.
I have a question on that.
Mhm.
In the screenshot that you show us, you have 2 times the error, one on the top, one on the bottom.
Yes, this will be removed now with the, or is it already removed with the new unified notifications?
Not yet. We need to improve the error messages here because we are intercepting all errors and showing them, and then we have different screens where we also show a different message. And this should be improved in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So then I'm handing over to Moritz.
Thank you. Let's hope this sharing works here. Okay, probably I need to give some permissions. Can someone else maybe share instead of me? That would be great. I don't think it works for me right now.
That's strange. Which browser are you using?
Chrome, but it's on macOS, and I need to give special permissions and stuff. And yeah, so I'm just gonna do it like that, and we can show the pull requests maybe a little bit. So the first big thing that I worked on this sprint was basically switching our releases of the Helm charts of Keptn away from having a GCP bucket, a storage bucket that serves that content. And I switched it out to basically have 2 separate GitHub repositories that make use of GitHub pages to basically serve our Helm charts in the future. As basically it's kind of the same as before, only that the URL changed. You can see it in the Helm charts repository in the README. Actually, it's now just charts.keptn.sh. You will get a small README welcome page there, but if you go to basically any subdomain there to the GitHub pages branch, then you should see all of our charts there. But you need to switch to the GitHub pages, GH pages branch. They're only in there. And then in the packages folder, and there's basically all our charts as before, just that they're now served through GitHub pages and this repository. For this release and the upcoming release, we will actually support both Helm chart repositories. So the new release, the upcoming one, will also still be on the previous charts repo, but in the future this will fully be switched to the GitHub pages ones. And then you can always access the Helm repository with charts.keptn.sh basically. A second thing that I worked on was some verification security feature. Basically, I added a feature to our release pipeline to also generate Docker image digests for our new releases. And those will actually be checked against our online Docker Hub images nightly, so that we can always be sure that our images are still exactly the ones that we released. Nothing happened, nobody tampered with them in any way. So from now on every release, there will be this digest.csv file, which just contains all our artifacts and the Docker SHA-SUMs so that you can actually verify against the Docker images you download. Yeah, so that you can be sure that you have the right images and everything is fine with them. In addition to that, I also fixed some things in our integration test pipeline. We have basically bot build branches, bot build commits on our master branch. And those work slightly different than if any user would actually merge something, in that bots actually don't have access to the GitHub secrets in the pipelines, and therefore we can't log into Docker Hub and push any images there. So this means in return that if our integration tests take the master branch and there was a bot triggered build, there wouldn't be any images to pull from, and then our integration test pipeline failed because it couldn't fetch any images. So basically I fixed that by filtering out those runs from bots, and only taking into account the ones that were actually triggered by human users, basically. So this will make our integration test pipeline a little more stable again.
That's great. Thank you.
And then one last thing, where the PR is actually already open, but not yet reviewed or merged. So I'm probably going to present it again next sprint review. I'm currently, or I just finished working on having static GKE clusters for our integration tests, in favor of recreating them from scratch every time on every run. Basically, we have 2 static clusters now, and every integration test run happens in a separate unique namespace that has the GitHub Actions run number appended to it so that it is unique. And this should actually speed up our integration test runs, because you don't need to set up clusters every time from scratch. Yeah. And also, we need a much more restricted GCP token now on GitHub. So this token has far less privileges than the one we had before. Yeah, and that's already it from me. I will present this PR in a little more detail next time when it's merged and reviewed and everything. So yeah, handing over to Klaus then.
Yeah, thanks. Let me share my screen. So I worked on the new notifications, because previously we had about 3 or 4 different ways on how to display a notification. And now we have one to rule them all. And yeah, just like for the notifications that a new version is available, there's now a sticky one. And for example, if I create a project, there's then another one which has a timeout. So for the create project, it's about 10 seconds, I guess, and then it fades out. And yeah, this should be after a couple of time. Yeah, then it fades out and it is gone. Just to mention, if you hover over it again, it is with opacity to with full opacity, and the timeout will start again. And yeah, that's basically it. Notification, and each error that could happen on a HTTP request is now shown with this notification instead of something else with the toast on the bottom or a error message embedded in some view. So it's just this one. And yeah, that's basically it. Are there any questions? If not, then I'm handing over to Flo.
All right, thank you. Let me just share my screen. So All right, what do we have here today? So first one is the webhook service. So if you recall it, we do provide the feature of enabling or disabling whether the webhook service should send a finished event when it has taken over the responsibility of handling a task or triggered event. And with this PR that I worked on during this week, we now also provide the option of disabling the sending of the started events. Unfortunately, I can't show you a demo right now because my local dev cluster just decided to give up on me. It does that from time to time. But maybe let's just look at an example of a webhook file. So for example, this one here, as you can see, in addition to the send finish property, we also allowed to specify the send started. What's noteworthy here is to not break anything. The default behavior, if this is not set, will be such that the started event will be indeed sent by default. So only if this is really specified explicitly to false, then the started event will not be sent. So this way we won't break any existing webhook files that have been configured with previous versions. Any questions about that? All right, if not, let's continue with the next one. So this is about the shipyard controller and its interaction with the resource service. So with this new resource service that we've presented in one of the past meetings, we now also provide the option of retrieving a certain resource commit ID. That's to take load of the upstream repository, because if the git commit ID is already there in the local history of the resource service, there's no need to fetch it from the upstream. And to really make use of that within the task sequence execution, the controller will now check for incoming sequence.triggered events. And if the git commit ID is specified in this event, it will take that and propagate it throughout the sequence via the git commit ID property in the cloud events, which lives next to other properties such as the Keptn context ID or the triggered ID, etc. So services will be able to retrieve it that way. So if the sequence.triggered event contains that ID, it will propagate that one. And otherwise, if it's not there, it will fetch the shipyard file, the latest status of the shipyard file. Together with that, it will also retrieve the latest shipyard, the latest git commit ID, and then it will propagate this commit ID throughout the sequence, so services can make use of that as well. Any questions about that? All right.
I have a question. Do we have already some numbers about how much do we improve in terms of speed?
Yes, Anna did research on that. Anna, do you have the link to the...
I look for it a sec.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, in the meantime, I will go through the other.
I also now would have one question. Sorry. How does the shipper controller get the git hash if it's not specified?
It will pull a resource from the configuration service. So in that case, the metadata of the stage, for example, that has been created during the stage creation. And if it does that and it doesn't provide the git commit ID, then the resource service will pull the latest changes from the upstream So it will see what the last commit was, and then together with the resource, it will return this commit ID. And then this ID can be used throughout this particular stage. And then, for example, exactly, yeah. And then if another sequence is triggered in the next stage, then it will do it again for this particular stage.
And okay, sorry, one more question. How do you decide if there is a transition from one stage to the next stage, whether you can reuse the Git commit or not?
For now, we cannot reuse it because right now the stages are stored as individual branches with different histories in the Git tree. So now for every new stage of a sequence, we need to do that again. But as you might know, we are working on the new Git model where we store the stages as directories, all in the same branch. And in that case, once we have done that, we are able to reuse the same commit ID across multiple stages as well.
So in other words, with the current model, we simply always take the head of the respective branch.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then the next one. This was a little fix for the distributor, so let's just have a look at the issue. So basically, unfortunately, the cluster is not there yet, but what happened there was that whenever a distributor for an execution plane service was registering itself at the uniform API, it also has the possibility to communicate the version of the distributor that is being used. And apparently we didn't have that set properly in the Helm chart. So this was just a matter of required distributor version environment variable in the Helm charts. So now this is being set to the distributor image tag, if that one has been set explicitly, or if not, it will fall back to the app version of the chart, which is the current Keptn version that has been installed. All right, next one. So the next one was a fix for our current configuration service. So recently we had some permission issues on certain platforms where the configuration service couldn't properly use or set the global Git configuration. And that's why we have introduced a change in the last Keptn version where the Git config is set individually per project within the project directories. Meaning that the Git user and the Git email, which are required, are set there. But then we had a backwards compatibility problem where in projects that have been created with older Keptn versions and where still the global config was used, these properties were not determined correctly anymore. And so this pull request just ensures that before a stage, before a commit is staged and pushed, the Git user is configured properly. So now also projects created with previous Keptn versions will then continue to work as usual. Any questions about that? All right. Then the next one is a really small one. So this was also for the configuration service. So here we had the bug that if upstream repository was updated for for a project and that upstream URL was not found, we got a 500 error. And yeah, basically all that needed to be done here was to properly set the response code. So instead of a 500, we now return a 404 in case the upstream repository is not found. And then finally, something useful for the CLI. So, well, let's actually just look at the documentation. So in the pull request for the docs I was working on here, I added a little section about using an HTTP proxy with the CLI. So if you have that kind of scenario where you need to communicate over a proxy, you can now look up how that works. All you need to do is set the HTTP proxy or HTTPS proxy environment variable, and then the CLI will route all outgoing API requests through this proxy that is specified here. So as you can see, you can either set an IP or a URL, or if you have some sort of basic HTTP authentication, then you can provide the URL in this format, and then the CLI will work with that proxy. Any questions about that?
Not a question, but Flo, the documentation update you showed us is for Keptn 012, right?
I actually did it for the last two versions, so 0.12 and 0.11, because actually no changes were necessary for the CLI, and I did with those two versions. And I'm not 100% sure, but maybe we can also double check whether we can also add this section to 0.10.
No,
maybe
okay,
we can discuss this on how far back we would like to go here.
Now I get it. There were no changes required on the CLI side, as this is supported out of the box. Am I right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Then, yeah, I will hand over to Bernd.
Bernd couldn't attend today, so I will share on his behalf. So now you should be able to see my screen. Bernd in the last sprint worked on improving the SLI to support also SSO integrations based on the OAuth authorization code flow. So multiple PR have been created, but the general gist of it is that now we support a new flag, --SSO, which enables to pass the SSO URL. Do we have all the data? Because there are multiple. Ah, here it is. So when we specify the --SSO flag, then the CLI will try to use the OAuth flow to authenticate a user against the SSO provider. And for that, several parameters are required. So the SSO client ID, which is the OAuth client ID, basically. And then the SSO discovery URL, which is the one used for the OpenIDC to know all the different URL that are needed in order to start to the authentication flow, sorry. And yeah, this was his first PR. Any question for this? If no, then I will jump to the second one. So since we have the possibility to specify an SSO, we can also avoid to use the API token, because your SSO integration might inject automatically the API token to each HTTP request. So you don't you don't need to provide it as a part of the UI, but the authentication via SSO also then grants you the rights to automatically pass through. So the CLI does not complain anymore if you don't specify the API token, but you need to make sure that you configure your system in order to inject this API token automatically after the SSO authenticate your users. We will follow up with some more documentation on this, how to prepare such an environment. Then we marked some APIs at the internal. In our Swagger UI, we show that these APIs endpoints are for internal usage only, but they were still available to the public. So what it did, it changed our nginx configuration, so these endpoints are not available anymore from outside of your Keptn installation. They're only accessible from the core services of Keptn. And then he also did some rework on the Keptn API for the Go utils. Before, for each API endpoint, we needed to create a lot of boilerplate code, but he refactored that in order to create an API set. This way, APIs, the development experience is highly increased, because instead of creating a lot of different objects for each endpoint, you just need to create one object, which then helps you to guide through the creation of each API. For instance, to get the project API, you just need to call API set dot which service you want to contact, for instance, the project, and then which of these API you want. So this is a developer experience improvement. Any question for this? Okay. If none, then I think it's back to you, Oleg. Which left though?
Oleg had to leave, and that's the reason why I'm taking it over and wrapping it up. Yeah, bring me the question to the audience. Are there additional questions, feedback you want to share in this meeting?
Because I kind of forgot about it when I was presenting. So Anna was kind enough to put the link to the results of the performance evaluation for the configuration service in the chat.
Perfect. Here in the chat, let me just look them up. Here's the data.
Wow. Impressive results.
That's nice. Okay, great. What we can see here is actually the improvements on a performance level. And here we are talking about 1.9 seconds.
This is with the old
Hold
one.
on, it's a new one, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the old one and the new one are 200 milliseconds.
And that's the new one, retrieving always with a pull, and lower there is with a git commit, like the last result.
It's in nanoseconds?
Yeah.
You want? Okay.
Wow, yeah, that's impressive. Cool, thanks for sharing. Let me also add the link here. We have more details. Improvements. Perfect, thanks a lot. Then, yeah, I think the final words from my end are again a hint to the doodle that Oleg created during the meeting and now sent out, or will send out tomorrow via Slack. And this is all about moving this meeting to another time frame. But I assume that the outcome and the the result will be shared via Slack, and we will still have our next meeting in this format next Thursday, where then also the outcome will be presented and additional decisions will be made. Okay, yeah, please participate in this doodle to also represent your voice. And if there are no further questions, nope, not the case, then I will close the meeting for today. Thanks for joining. If you want, please also join the APEC EMEA meeting next Wednesday, or let's come together next Thursday. Then have a nice week and see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.